Tumultuous storms in the North Atlantic are not uncommon. But the Ocean Ranger was built to withstand the worst of them. Owned by Ocean Drilling and Exploration Company, or ODECO, it was hailed as unsinkable. The $120 million semi-submersible oil rig was the pride of an offshore exploration fleet. Its job was to search for oil farther and deeper than ever before, in areas previously thought too hostile.
A semi-submersible is a particular type of vessel that's really been adapted exclusively for drilling offshore. And the reason for that is it's got particularly good motion characteristics in waves. And that is achieved by having the pontoons underneath the water. The main part of the buoyancy is underneath the surface, and the part that crosses the surface are the columns, which are relatively small in area. And what this means is that the vessel doesn't respond to wave action very much, and so the motion characteristics are good for drilling.
With a platform the size of 2 football fields and towering 35 stories from keel to derrick, it was the symbol of stability.
The Ocean Ranger at the time it was built was the largest such vessel in the world. It had 2 pontoons and 8 columns, which was not unusual, but it was the largest vessel. And generally, with vessels, the larger they are, the better they behave in the sea. So it was probably the most tolerant vessel of its time. And of course, at the time, it was probably the most modern.
In November 1980, the Ocean Ranger arrived on the Grand Banks, 170 miles off the coast of Newfoundland.
Yeah, back in the 80s, and when work wasn't so plenty, you know, when the oil rigs came to Newfoundland, it was great. I mean, people got jobs offshore, and they went out there and they made good money, and it was good work. The oil business in Newfoundland put a lot of people on their feet.
On February 6, 1982, the crew of the Ocean Ranger got its first scare when a problem with the ballast control caused the rig to tilt or list unexpectedly. Ballast control is the process by which the rig is kept level by pumping seawater into or out of the ballast tanks located in the pontoons.
I was in the crane moving around some stuff, and the rig started to list, so we didn't know what the hell was going on there. So I got down out of the crane, and my workers and myself and all the other people went to the lifeboats, and it was kind of panicking because we didn't know. It was a beautiful day, and if it had to be a bad day that day, I wouldn't want to be aboard that rig.
Luckily, the seas were calm, and the problem was corrected, but the stage for catastrophe was set. John Crow went on his monthly shore leave a few days later. On February 14, 1982, an intense storm hit the Grand Banks with winds of 90 knots and waves as high as 50 feet. At about 8 p.m., a violent wave broke through a porthole in the ballast control room and washed over the control panel, causing the system to short circuit.
Now you have a whole bunch of electric components that are soaking wet with not just water, salt water. So of course, immediately the whole electrical system controlling the stability of the Ocean Ranger falls apart. I mean, stops working, starts working aberrantly.
Because such emergency situations were never anticipated on the unsinkable Ocean Ranger, technical and safety training had been less than adequate. The confused crew scrambled to fix the problem, but this time the seas were raging. Seawater entered the forward tanks in the port pontoon and caused a rapid 10-degree list to port and forward. The rig wasn't designed to deal with this kind of situation.
Where they had difficulties because on the Ocean Ranger, the ballast pumps were located in the stern. It was listed to the bow. These pumps were not capable of pumping out the bow tanks.
The crew was also untrained in the operation of the pneumatic manual override system.
No one on that ship knew how to use extra long threaded control rods which would bypass the control panel that was now soaked altogether and could cause them to manually turn on the air relays that would change the valving and the stability of the ship.
Just after 1 a.m. on February 15th, a distress call was issued.
Search and rescue, Burns.
Mobile radio calling.
Yeah.
Got an emergency on the Ocean Ranger.
Half an hour later, the crew commenced evacuation.
And they want to evacuate by the looks of it.
But only a fraction of the men were able to board the lifeboats, which weren't even designed for violent storms and heavy listing situations. These circumstances had not been anticipated.
The launch method where you just drop them on two cables, you really have very little control over what happens as soon as you start that launch.
The rig capsized at 3:15 a.m. A nearby supply ship attempted to carry out rescue operations, but the seas were too rough and too cold. Wearing only their clothes and life jackets, the men, including those who fell out of the lifeboats, were immobilized almost instantly and couldn't grasp the lines being cast. All 84 of the Ocean Ranger's men met their watery graves in a matter of minutes. With no survivors, Canadian and U.S. investigators had to somehow piece together what happened that fateful night. Canada's National Research Council built a scale model of the Ocean Ranger and performed a myriad of lab tests to determine what went wrong.
This is the model of the Ocean Ranger that was used as part of the inquiry into the disaster conducted by the Royal Commission. This area here is where the ballast control room was located. The portholes would have been located so that you could see the draft marks. The water level would have been about here. And so you can see that the control room is located a fair ways below the main deck here.
The ballast control was located too low on the rig, and the control panel was too close to a porthole, rendering it vulnerable.
When you consider ballast control panels in rig designs that have been made since, it is almost universal, or I'm sure it is universal now, that if they are not waterproof, then they are in situations where either water from the outside or water from internal pipes cannot get at them.
Aside from identifying the design flaws, investigators cited inadequate crew training and numerous safety violations. As a result of the Ocean Ranger tragedy, survival suits, as well as technical and survival training, were made mandatory on rigs stationed in North Atlantic waters. Lifeboat launch systems have improved dramatically, and semi-submersibles are now required to carry lifeboats for 200% crew capacity, with half located on opposing poles of the vessel, in case of a heavy list in either direction.
On the Ocean Ranger on that fatal night, I guess the weather was so bad, and I guess if they had to close the dark window in the leg, so many things you can say they could have done probably, and I guess Mother Nature just let everybody know that you can't build anything big enough that she can take.